year was 1956. The famous Red Scare was near its end. The Soviet Union and its ideology weren't the big monsters figures like McCarthy made them out to be anymore. Peace was near the corner. That was until one fateful night of fall. A group of American scientists, escorted by foot soldiers of the U.S. infantry, were making their way onto the Bering Strait to conduct a series of experiments near the region. That is when they were met with a most displeasing surprise. Several Soviet platoons were found marching down Alaska after departing into the strait via the sea. It seems they were in the process of a silent invasion of North America. Upon sight, both sides immediately opened fire on each other. In the end, all Americans in the scene were murdered, including the scientists, as the Russians were dealt with minimal losses, continuing their descent into the continent. As soon as the recently re-elected President Geoffrey Morgan was made aware of this altercation, a declaration of war against the USSR was put out in a matter of days, quickly being responded by the Russians. And thus began one of the 20th century's deadliest conflicts, the Pallid War. After the declaration of war in 1956, Americans all over the country were drafted. With the unexpected arrival of this conflict, the country was forced to draft from 16-year-old citizens to even the elderly, as the nation was in dire need for soldiers. Russia was more lenient with its drafting procedures, however. American troops were quickly deported into the Alaska state, alongside Canadian and British armies, donating some divisions for the war. With West and East Germany recently uniting into one country, Russia lost one of their most militarized allies and was forced to fight the war alone. As the war raged on for a few years, quickly escalating into the 60s, it seemed the conflict was stagnating. Every successful American push was met with an even more deadly Soviet push, and so on, so on. In 1955, however, something happened that would change the course of warfare forever. Thanks to a temporary government funding, thousands of scientific agencies in America came together to produce light nuclear missiles designed specifically for the Pallid War. They had only 25% the explosion effectiveness of Little Boy and Fat Man, but the same radioactive properties. These missiles were named St. Michael's. Russia quickly caught up, however, producing their own missiles, the Parabellas. Thankfully, those missiles were used only in the battlefield. No cities were bombed. After the usage of nuclear weapons became common from 1959 to 1967, the Americans were finally climbing up the podium. Russia, who had dominated at least half of the upper part of North America, was slowly and brutally being pushed back into the sea. Even with the capacity to keep the Soviets out of northern land in mere months, it had seemed the Americans were taking the slow route purposefully. And after years and years of combat, in 1967, the organized nations of Earth, one, were forced to intervene. During a conference in Dublin, a negotiation for a peace offer was established. First, America and Russia would both pay massive indemnity for the damages caused in the war. The St. Michael and Parabella missiles were to be discarded from any use whatsoever. And lastly, With the fight for Alaska deeming itself futile, the region was determined a purgatory zone, forbidding the occupation of any nation recognized by one. So, on June of 1967, with the economy in shambles, the Pallid War was officially over, and all the young Americans drafted to the war were free to go home. Around the middle point of the war, with the Americans finally starting to push the USSR back into the strait, a rumor was starting to spread among troops, quickly heading up to army officials. With the many encounters with Alaskan and Canadian native villages, some theorized that the Russians were occupying those tribes as hiding places to ambush Americans, making deals with Native Americans to defeat a common enemy of theirs. With the quick spread of this rumor, hundreds of native tribes were targets of massacres, bombings, and general destruction by the Americans, in a violent search for Soviet soldiers hiding amongst the Indians. This culminated in the tragic loss of thousands of innocent Native Americans through the hands of the army. No documents of the presence of Soviet troops were found in the sites of the destroyed villages. The U.S. has yet to be tried.